A woman once set an old sewing tin on my counter and asked me to melt down the silver thimble inside it. I was not looking at the thimble. I was looking at one small carved button that had rolled into the corner of that tin, because after 20 years behind a jewelry counter, I knew that single button was worth more, ounce for ounce, than a gold coin the same size. She had no idea. Almost nobody does. Because here is what the world forgot. Before about 1900, buttons were not fasteners. They were jewelry, made by jewelers, in gold and enamel and diamond, worn to show the room you had money. Then machines learned to stamp them out by the million. Buttons got cheap, and the good ones got swept into a tin and forgotten for 100 years. These are the 10 buttons still worth a fortune, and how to spot each one with nothing but your fingers, your nose, your ears, and a magnifying glass. Number 1 is worth more than its own weight in solid gold. Go find your grandmother's tin. I will wait. Number 10, the shell button. Mother of pearl. Almost every old sewing tin has a handful, and this is where you train your eye, because the first skill is telling real shell from the plastic made to fake it. Real mother of pearl is cut from the iridescent inside of an oyster or mussel shell, and it has 3 tells. It feels cool to the touch and stays cool, the way stone does. It catches light with that deep rainbow shimmer that shifts as you tilt it. And no two are identical, because the shell decided the pattern, not a machine. Plastic imitations feel warm and light, and they repeat, because a mold made them. There is a second layer here too. Abalone shell throws blue and green fire, while the freshwater mussel shells that built the American button industry along the Mississippi River are softer and creamier. For a stretch of the early 1900s, whole towns in Iowa did nothing but cut buttons out of river shells, and collectors seek those American pearl buttons specifically. On its own, a shell button is worth $1 or $2. But finely carved ones, and full matched sets, climb well past that, and more importantly, learning to flip a button over and read what it is made of is the entire skill that makes the rest of this video worth thousands to you. Number 9, the metal picture button. Pull out any dark, tarnished brass button from the 1800s and look closely at the front, because the Victorians told entire stories on a disc the size of a coin. Fairy tales, animals, mythology, buildings, all struck in fine relief into base metal. These are called picture buttons, and collectors chase the detailed ones hard. Here is a real number. A realistic figural button showing a lady knitting, made of plain brass, no precious metal anywhere in it, sold on the secondary market for nearly $225. Brass. The value was never the metal. It was the artistry, the age, and how few survive with the details still crisp. Look for the ones with what collectors call a steel cup. Tiny faceted steel accents riveted around the picture that sparkle like marcasite, because those command more. And the deeper the relief, the more three-dimensional the scene, the higher the price, because a deep, sharp strike is harder to make and harder to survive a century of use. A flat, worn, blurry picture is worth little. A crisp, deep one with a story you can actually read is worth real money. So do not judge a button by whether it is gold. Judge it by what is carved into it. Number 8, the military button. If there is a man in your family who served, or a uniform in an attic somewhere, stop and look at the buttons before anything else. Military buttons carry the insignia of a regiment, a branch, an era, and collectors of military history hunt them relentlessly. On their own, most are worth a modest amount, but together they detonate. And here's the insider detail almost nobody checks. Turn a military button over and look for the back mark, the maker's stamp on the reverse. That back mark can date the button to a specific decade and a specific maker, and it is the difference between a common reproduction and a genuine period piece worth 10 times as much. A 46-piece set of Civil War buttons sold at auction for $2,012. The lesson that runs through this whole video starts right here. With buttons, the set is worth far more than the sum of its parts, so never, ever break one up before you know what you have. Number 7, celluloid and ivoroid. Now we get into the early plastics, and this is where people throw away money without knowing it. Before modern plastic, there was celluloid, one of the very first man-made materials, and there was ivoroid, which was made from vegetable ivory, the ground pulp of the corozo nut, pronounced cor-o-zo, carved to look exactly like real elephant ivory. Here is the counterintuitive part that costs people the most. These early plastics yellow and darken with age, and everyone assumes that yellowing means damage, means cheap, means throw it out. To a collector, the yellowing is proof. It confirms the button is genuinely old and not a modern copy. And because celluloid is flammable and falls apart easily, a tin full of intact examples that survived 100 years has beaten long odds just by existing. There is a warning that comes with this one, though. Some people test old plastic by dropping it in hot water to smell it, and with celluloid, that is a genuinely bad idea, because celluloid is unstable and heat can warp it or worse. For these, trust your eyes. The warm, slightly soft feel, the deep aged color, and the fine carving. And keep an eye out for the novelty ones. The little figural celluloid buttons shaped like faces and animals from the 1920s and 30s, because a well-preserved character button can bring a surprising sum from the right collector. The discoloration you are about to bin is the very thing that authenticates it. Number 6, the glass button. Victorians were obsessed with glass, and they made buttons that imitated precious stones so well people still mistake them today. Bohemian glass cut to sparkle like gemstones, and black glass made in enormous quantities to imitate jet during the long mourning fashion of the era when a widow wore black from head to buttons. Here is the trap. People find these and assume one of two wrong things, either that they are real gemstones or that they are worthless costume junk. They are neither. Antique glass buttons are their own serious collector market, and the finely faceted ones, the ones that still throw light like a cut stone, sell for real money to people who know exactly what they are looking at. And there is one kind of glass button that is a small miracle in itself. The paperweight button, where a tiny flower or design is suspended inside clear glass, made using the same technique as those expensive glass paperweights, by hand, one at a time. Those are prized. Hold a glass button to the light and look into it, not just at it. If there is a world suspended inside, or if it sparkles like a real cut stone and it is genuinely old, it is not junk. It is a jewel that happens to have a shank on the back. Now, if you have already gone digging for that sewing tin, you are exactly who I make these videos for, so hit subscribe. Because the last 5 are where the numbers stop being cute and start being serious, and number 1 is worth more than its own weight in gold. Number 5, the Satsuma button, pronounced Satsuma. These are tiny discs of Japanese porcelain, hand-painted, exported from Japan in huge numbers in the late 1800s and early 1900s. And this is the first button where your magnifying glass earns its keep, because the value lives entirely in the quality of the painting. Mass-produced Satsuma is pretty but crude, but the fine artisan work, painted by a real master with a brush of a few hairs, holds up under magnification in a way the cheap ones never do. A single-signed Satsuma porcelain button, 2 inches across, sold for $565. One button. Look for fine gold outlining around the figures, real raised gold, and for the classic Japanese subjects, geishas, dragons, flowers, thousand faces designs where a whole crowd is painted in miniature. The finest are signed on the back by the artist or the workshop, and a signature by a known hand multiplies the value. The difference between $5 and $500 is invisible across the room and obvious under a loupe, so look closely, because on these, the brushwork is the bank account. Number 4, the enamel button. Enamel is colored glass fused onto metal in a kiln at high heat, and when it is done by a master, it is breathtaking and it is valuable. The 2 techniques to hunt for are cloisonné, pronounced ay, where thin metal wires hold each color in its own little cell, and the rare one, plica-jour, pronounced plica-jour, which is enamel with no metal backing at all, so light passes straight through it like a stained glass window. A figural enamel button shaped like a peacock, from the early 1900s, was listed for around $400 on the strength of its detail alone. And here's a test you already know from my video on jewelry secrets. Real fired enamel is glassy and smooth and cool, while cheap imitation feels like painted plastic. Run your fingertip across it. Glass, not plastic, is the money. Number 3, the Victorian precious metal button. Now we are on my home ground, because some of the best old buttons are simply small pieces of fine jewelry with a shank on the back instead of a clasp. Solid gold. Sterling silver. And my favorite marker of the era, marcasite, pronounced marcusite, those tiny faceted stones of iron pyrite the Victorians set by the dozen so they would glitter like little diamonds in candlelight. A set of Victorian buttons from the 1860s, made of 14-karat gold filigree with sterling silver and marcasite, sold for $750. Turn the button over and read the back, exactly like I have told you to do with every piece of jewelry on this channel, because the stamp that tells you it is gold or silver tells you it is not a button at all. And do not overlook the cut steel buttons of the same era, hand-faceted studs of polished steel riveted one by one onto a metal base, made to flash like diamonds before electric light existed. Some early ones have 80 or 100 individually riveted facets, each one set by hand, and when they have survived without rust, collectors pay well for that lost, painstaking craft. Real gold, sterling, marcasite, cut steel. Turn the button over and read the back, exactly like I have told you to do with every piece of jewelry on this channel, because the stamp that tells you it is precious tells you it is not a button at all. It is jewelry in disguise. Number 2, Bakelite. And this is the one that breaks people's brains, because it is plastic, and it is worth more than gold. Bakelite was the first fully synthetic plastic on Earth, invented in 1907, and collectors go absolutely feral for it. Plain Bakelite buttons bring real money in lots. Deeply carved ones bring $100 to $500. And the rarest carved and figural Bakelite buttons have reached $1,500. for a plastic button. More than a gold button the same size. And you can test it right there at the table with the same tests I showed you for Bakelite bracelets at the yard sale. First, look for a seam. Real Bakelite was carved from a solid rod, so a mold line means modern plastic and you are done. Second, feel the weight. Real Bakelite is dense and heavy for its size. Third, tap two pieces together. Bakelite gives a deep, dense clunk, not a light click. And fourth, rub it hard with your thumb until it warms and smell it. Real Bakelite gives off a sharp chemical smell, the formaldehyde it was born from. One more thing collectors know that most people do not. Some pieces sold as Bakelite are actually Catalin, a related plastic that came in 15 extra colors after the Bakelite patent expired, and it passes the same tests. The colors people chase hardest are deep, cherry red, butterscotch, and a translucent yellow collectors call apple juice, along with anything that layers two colors together. A rare color or a laminated two-tone carving can turn a $5 button into a $100 one. No seam, real weight, that clunk, that smell, and you are holding the most valuable plastic ever made. And number one, the jackpot, the button that started this whole video, real gold and gemstones. Because before buttons were cheap, the wealthy wore their fortune down the front of their coats. Kings had them made in solid gold. Aristocrats commissioned them like fine jewelry, painted by artists and set with real stones, sewn onto a coat that cost more than a house. So a gentleman in the 1700s could wear more wealth down the front of his jacket than most people owned in a lifetime. These are the ones made by actual jewelers. A pair of French cufflink buttons in 18-karat gold and hand-painted enamel, made between 1819 and 1838, listed at $3,900. A set of 6 9-karat gold buttons from around 1910, each one showing a golfer mid-swing, listed at $3,370. Antique 14-karat gold buttons with a fox on the front and a real ruby set as its eye. And the crown of them all, a 13-piece set of buttons made with rose-cut diamonds and rubies sold at a Christie's auction for around $20,000. $20,000 in buttons. If a button feels heavy and cold, if it has real stones, if there is a hallmark stamped on the back, you are not holding a button. You are holding jewelry that a very rich person once wore to dinner. So what ties all 10 of these together? 2 rules. Rule 1. A button's value is never in the fact that it is a button. It is in the material, the maker, and the age. Exactly like a piece of jewelry, because half of these literally are jewelry. Think about how it happens. A grandmother cuts the buttons off a worn-out coat before she throws the coat away, because that is what her generation did. They wasted nothing. Those buttons go in the tin. The coat is long gone, the grandmother is long gone, and the buttons sit there for 50 years, and one of them was gold, or enamel, or hand-carved, and nobody left alive remembers. The sewing tin is a jewelry box that nobody in the family ever thought to open. Rule 2. And this is the one that costs people the most. The set is worth more than the pieces. I told you the same thing about charm bracelets in my video on broken jewelry, and it is even more true here. A single Civil War button is worth a little. A full set is worth thousands. An entire Victorian button collection, mounted on its original cards, has sold for over $2,000 as one lot. So if you find a tin, do not sell it button by button to the first person who offers cash. You will hand away the collection for the price of the buttons. Now the honest part, because this channel does not sell fairy tales. Most buttons are just buttons, and most sell for under $50. The prices I gave you are the rare ones, and rare means rare. A real button collection deserves a proper appraisal, the same as any jewelry, and marks and materials can fool you if you rush. But checking costs you nothing, and being wrong the other way has cost families collections worth more than their car. This channel takes no sponsorships and no paid placements. No dealer, no auction house, nobody pays to be praised or buried here, and that independence is the only reason I can tell you to go through a button tin before you ever throw it out. If straight answers like this are why you come back, the join button below makes you a member and keeps these breakdowns honest. Now go get the tin. The old sewing tin, the coffee can full of buttons, the jar in the back of the drawer. Tell me in the comments what you find. A button with no seam and a deep clunk, a hand-painted face under a loop, a hallmark stamped on the back. Describe it, and I will tell you whether it is worth taking to someone. I read every single one. And whatever you do, do not empty that tin into the trash before you check. I'll see you in the next one.